Hello there, our Nevermore Hollows psychos. This is Madman.
Hey.
And Lafayette, and we've got something special that we're going to do today. As you know, we launched our Buy Me a Coffee, and we launched our Patreon.
Yep.
And one of the things that we're doing on Patreon, we've got a couple of things on Patreon that we're doing, but one of the things that we're going to be doing is just having discussions about the creative process. And this video in this episode today is just going to be kind of in that vein, so you'll understand what we're talking about. Because I know that I've always enjoyed, if I'm nerding out on something, going deeper. How did those folks come up with the voice, the character, the writing?
Oh, yeah, that's always the fun part.
So that's what we're going to do. So these are just going to be little short nuggets here and there. So if you are so inclined, we are so thankful for you, but we would ask if you want to figure out a way to support the show. The number one way is text the show to somebody.
Tell your friends. Tell people who aren't your friends.
Tell your enemies.
Yeah, tell your enemies. But tell everybody about the show, because that helps us keep the show going.
Right.
And delving deeper into this weird little town that, like I say, it's a great place to visit, but you don't want to live there.
Right. And we've created a universe. That's what we're trying to do. We're not just trying to tell little independent stories. We're trying to tell a universe. And you said it best. And when you said it the other day, we started getting a lot of comments from folks going, yes, I love what Chris said. It's a nice place to visit and come and hang out. And that's awesome. But, that is the number one way of helping the show. Comment on every show. Leave us 5 stars if you're listening on your favorite podcast platform. If you're on YouTube, hit the like button, share it. That all these things are going to kick in the algorithm, which allows us to grow and get to the point where we can offer more content.
Right. Tell us what you think.
Yeah.
We're older guys and we got thick skins and we can take it.
Yeah.
So tell us what you think.
If you love it, awesome. We want to hear that.
Right.
But also, if you don't like it.
Yeah. You know.
We probably won't care.
Yeah.
I say that jokingly, but no, it's always good to have honest critique.
Oh, well, yeah. Honest critique.
Right.
Is always good. And because, and it's constructive.
Right.
And it's good for everybody because that makes us be able to put out a better product.
That's right. So with that, if you're so inclined and you want to support us that way, that's the best way. And then the other way is buy us a coffee. Links are going to be in all the episodes. And, if you want to, subscribe to us on Patreon, we've got a couple of subscribers. We're going to give shout outs to them on the next episode.
Yep.
And we are so thankful for those subscribers.
Oh, yes.
And we're trying to make it worth your while.
And, we've got 3 different levels. We're trying to be economical. But the stuff that you're going to get when you get into the upper levels is pretty cool. And and I think you're going to like it.
Right. Because we do the show for free. We love giving it out there. We love our fans. But we do have cost associated with it.
Yes.
So if you're so inclined, thank you. Otherwise, let's get into it. So the first thing that we wanted to talk about in the creative process was I thought the Tooth Fairy would be. Let's get into that, because a lot of these stories I wrote before you came on board.
Right.
But since you've been here, you have helped. You've not helped write stories, but you've helped create characters. You've given story ideas. You've helped with story lines. When I get stuck, I reach out to you and I go, hey, where should we go with this? And we're bouncing things off of that. So you're very important in the story development. But the Tooth Fairy was one of those that was pre-Madman.
But it's typical Nevermore. It is not the cute little Tooth Fairy that everybody expects.
Right. So some of the things, if you've got questions as we get into this, just go ahead, or observations, go ahead and throw them out there. But I thought it would be interesting to talk about, how did I come up with the Nevermore Hollows version of the Tooth Fairy? So it all started, honestly, okay, we're in 2025, so 30 years ago in 1995, I wrote a story.
Yeah.
Okay, it wasn't a horror story. I wrote a story about a Waffle Hut in a small town where this psychotic homeless vagrant walks in and takes everybody hostage.
Okay.
And that's back when I was doing stand-up comedy.
Right.
And I was like, okay, look, I know how to write comedy. I want to see if I can write other things. And so that was my first little short story. It was going to be a book, and it ended up just being a short story, and I never did anything with it.
Okay.
Right? I just,
there was a reason.
Right. There's a reason. So right. You and I believe that all things happen for a reason. Yeah. So I just kind of, it was on an old computer. This is back before we had the cloud, and it was on the old computer somewhere. So when I created Nevermore Hollows, the first episode that I put out was Psycho Juju. It was Psycho Juju. And I thought, well, this dovetails nicely with, I love the whole Waffle Hut kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I was like, there's an old story somewhere that maybe I could retool. So I went back and I found that story.
And it's a good one.
And I thought, okay, I want to swing for the fences here. I want to do something that nobody's doing. Yeah. And I thought, well, all right, so I've founded the universe on a demon-possessed monkey who has an affinity for clowns. Okay, so I thought
maybe not an affinity, maybe more of a disdain.
Right. Well, we're going to get to that because the next episode we're going to shoot is we're going to be talking about Psycho Juju.
Right.
So anyway, we've launched this universe with Psycho Juju. All right, and I was like, well, how do I follow that up? And so I went back and I dug out that story and I said, all right, because I really loved that story when I wrote it back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, now that I'm willing to embrace and try to find this new idea, do this new thing, how do I make this different? So I sat there and I went, well, I like the character being this vagrant guy who's psychotic, but what do I do with him? I want a monster. You can see we try to make all the monsters in Nevermore Hollows something very unique.
Oh yeah, yeah, they have to be different.
So some of these things come to me in really weird ways. I was on my way to the dentist, right, and I was like, well, what if he's the Tooth Fairy? And I said to myself, I'm driving down the road, and I talk out loud, and I know you do too.
I do
we
too.
We talk to ourselves, right? And I was talking to myself, and I was like, well, what the hell do I do with that?
But the first two stories in Nevermore are statistically two of the things that people are scared of the most: clowns and the dentist.
That's right. Yeah.
So
I was sitting there, and I'll go in, and I'm go through the issue with the dentist, and by the time I got out of there, I went, I'm gonna make him the Tooth Fairy. Mm-hmm. So then I started going, well, how do I change him? What do I change him into? I said, don't. That's such a descriptive visual thing, and I love the fact that he's this dirty guy, but his teeth are perfect.
Yeah.
Right. So, and then he's carrying around the bag of teeth
and the rusty pliers, but then he looks just, but.
And the fact that he's naked under the rain slicker and covered in tattoos.
Yeah, and then you think about being in the Waffle Hut, which is on the outskirts of town.
Right.
So it's kind of out in the middle of nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And, gloomy night, probably raining. Mm-hmm. And then this weirdo steps in.
And locks the door.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, crap. But, and then the solution to dealing with the Tooth Fairy was really, really good. And I don't want to give away any spoilers or anything, but it was simple, but perfect. Because when I'm, as a listener, which I was originally before I got involved, I'm going, oh, that's an awesome thing. I never would have thought of that, but it's brilliant in its simplicity. And, and that's the best part about a lot of the Nevermore stories is that in movies, everything's got to be complicated. Mm-hmm. But in Nevermore, it's usually something basic that's going to take out the critter.
Yeah, keep it simple.
Yeah.
And that's the thing too. If you'll notice, up to this point, there have been no magical items to defeat monsters.
Right.
And that's by choice.
Yeah.
Because again, I think, well, that's been there, done that, and that's always while there's always something I love about those stories where look, we've got to go find the magical item to kill the beast. There's always a quest there, and I love that kind of stuff. But it's been there, done that. So I thought, if I don't want people with special abilities, okay, because none of the good guys in Nevermore have any special supernatural powers.
Right.
I want them to be the everyman, the every woman, because I feel that you can resonate with that more closely. Okay,
Right.
So if they're your normal average person that's got to stand up to this evil, then I don't want it to be a cop-out that there's a magical item that helps them in the battle. I want the battle to be the willingness to stand up to evil. And then use your brain. How do you come up with that solution to fight this creature and overcome it?
Well, it harkens back to things that are beloved to my heart, which are the B movies from the 40s and 50s. And it's usually, I started thinking about it because I was watching one the other day, and salt is, I think I can name several movies where salt, just basic table salt, kills this critter.
Right.
But they always, they use the technical term for it. But, and I'm like, really?
Right.
Really? But it's kind of like the movie Signs.
Yeah.
Which, again, pretty basic. If I was a technologically advanced alien race, and the only thing that would hurt me is water, I don't think I'd come here.
Right. That we're 70% water. That
which I wanted a scene in. I want a scene in that movie where they're fighting the aliens with super soakers. That's all I want.
Right.
But
well, in Nevermore Hollows,
there is a super soaker.
There is a super soaker used in fighting
aliens.
Yes,
there is. But it's you do keep it simple, and I think that's like a bell ring in the middle of all this chaos is this clear bell ring of, this is what we're going to do. And in stories like that is the that's the montage sequence in the movies where everybody gets it right. But in Nevermore, it's always going to be something simple.
And when I got to the point where I had to kill the Tooth Fairy, or is he really dead?
Well, he's a Tooth Fairy,
because that character is too iconic, in my opinion. Because just the whole visual aspect of it, it's too much to not ever come back and visit.
And I want to know what took him from being the Tooth Fairy to being the Tooth Fairy,
right? And what's up with the teeth? Why is he so dirty, but yet his teeth? There's always, and as you've been picking my brain, and now that you're in the creative process and we're coming up and we're developing characters together, you always know there's a reason for everything.
Oh yeah,
there's a reason for everything. So when I figured out, I'm also one of those guys that if I write myself in a corner, and I've said this before, I write myself out.
Yeah,
I do not want to go, well, I've gotten this character is in this situation, and the only way to fix it is to go back and change something earlier. No. And you see that all the time, because I'll call you up and I go, dude, I've written the corner. I've got myself in a corner. I don't know how to get the boys out of this thing.
Right.
Help me get them out of this thing. And that used to be me. And I would spend hours trying to figure out, how do I get out of this? So I literally had to get up. I took a walk. I took a drive, because I had written myself, how is Winona and Isaac going to defeat the Tooth Fairy? And finally, it just hit me later on that day, after hours of brain power on it. It hit me. I went, here is the simplest solution. It makes it, and it's a very B-movie kind of solution.
Because it would be sitting on the counter and on every table.
That's right.
In the diner.
Right. But, he obviously didn't think anybody would know that.
No.
So before we go any further into to a little bit more discussion here, I want to ask you, because you seem pretty focused. Have you taken your magic mind today?
Yes, I have. I took it this morning because of where my daughter lives, there was bad weather, so I was up keeping an eye on her from a distance. And
because she's like 2.5 hours away.
Yeah, and, she's my only daughter. And but so I had to have it this morning because I was dragging.
Well, I took mine right before you got to the studio, and again, Magic Mind's being really good to us.
Oh yes, they have.
They've been supporting us. We've gotten, we love their product.
Yep.
And I took my shot. What I like about it is it gives you that mental clarity. It's a mental clarity shot. And, you and I we're trying to be healthy.
I'm doing my best.
Right? For the folks that are going to see pictures of us on Patreon, they're going to go, those dudes are healthy. But no, we're trying. We're trying to get in better shape. And, but, this is, it's got the mushrooms in it that we like.
Oh yeah, it's and it's I don't know, it just works.
200 studies, peer reviewed, and all that. And again, if you want, if you're listening and you want to give it a shot, you can go. There'll be a link in the description of the show, and you can click on the link, and it's you can either go to magicmind.com, but if you want to use our little our code, we get a little something there to help the show, and you get a discount.
But that's the deal, they get a discount.
That's right. So they get 20% off of one-time purchase.
That's awesome.
They get 48% off of a year subscription.
Wow.
But just go to magicmind.com and use Nevermore LT at the checkout, and we appreciate you doing that. But this is a product that Chris and I use. We're never gonna be those guys that sell out and go, hey, use this thing when we don't use it and don't believe it.
Oh, that's the truth. Yeah.
So with that being said, I am a huge caffeine junkie.
Oh yeah, me too.
So I'm constantly pounding the caffeine as I'm riding, and I get real fidgety and all that kind of stuff. But when I was riding the Tooth Fairy, I was so jazzed up that day that my walk, literally, I try to take a couple of miles walk a day if I can.
Yeah.
I must have walked for 2 hours, man, because I was and I was focused. I don't even remember anything on that walk because I was so jazzed up on caffeine. Because I was trying to think myself through the problem. And then when I got back, I practically ran back to the house, sat down, and then wrote how they defeated him.
Wrote this creepy Tooth Fairy that I don't even know if there was if ever we are able to put this on a visual platform, and we either I don't know who would be creepy enough to play the Tooth Fairy, because I mean you gotta find somebody who can be that holy crap creepy, and but it will be so
I would be curious
for
the folks who are listening, play along, put in the comments who you think would be a great Tooth Fairy. Who would play the Tooth Fairy in Nevermore Hollows? So now again, my theme, when I was doing stand-up comedy, Chris, I started out doing open mic in this little club, and then within a year, I'm getting work on the road where some of these other folks weren't. And everybody would come to me and they would go, how is it you're getting work on the road and we're not? Well, back in the 90s, every comedian wanted a character.
Right.
So they were pushing they were trying to develop a character, which is good. I love. But they were also doing a lot of social commentary. And I just got up there and I was like, all right, I'm a comedian. If I want people to pay me as a comedian, I need to be funny first.
Well, the best comedy, I think, is observational.
I agree. So where I'm going with that thought is when it comes to Nevermore Hollows, obviously there are themes in Nevermore Hollows. Yeah. Obviously, if you've listened enough, you know my theological views. But I start out every story, let's just tell a damn good story.
Yeah.
And, there are some stories that are out there in Nevermore Hollows that there's really not much of a theme. It's just almost a vignette. It's just a little, I didn't have anything to say. I just basically had this thing I wanted to put out because I thought it was creepy. But with the Tooth Fairy, that's one of those where he's evil, but you don't know why. Yeah.
But, but it's so... I love it. It's so obvious that he's evil. It's when he walks in, if you were sitting in the Waffle Hut and that guy walks in, it's like, yep, time to go.
Right. And the fact that he lays claim on everybody's teeth because he keeps saying, I've come for what's mine. Dude, they're my teeth.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you this. So, there's a couple of places in that story where he shakes his bag of teeth.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So back at that point, and I still do a lot of it, and you've helped on some of it. We do a lot of our own special effects.
Oh, yeah.
I tried everything. I had a baggie, right? A little Ziploc baggie. And I tried everything in that bag. I was walking around the house and I was shaking it and I would record it. And then I would go, does it sound like teeth in a bag? I tried everything. I tried ice. I tried, change. I tried rocks. I tried everything. And what I ended up settling on was poker chips. Poker chips in a Ziploc baggie. So
okay.
I tell you that to get to this, okay? I have a friend and she is a professor at a college and she teaches dentistry.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So she was a fan of the show and she calls me up after she heard and she goes, what did you use for the bag of teeth? And I told her and she goes, why didn't you call me? She goes, I've got a jar full of teeth on my desk.
And I think that's creepy too.
It is.
I said, you have a jar of teeth?
I said, Randa, that is the creepiest thing you've ever said to me in my life. She goes, it's what I teach. She goes, I've got teeth.
Okay.
So, all right, good. So I feel like we've gone a little bit into the creative process on how we came up with the Tooth Fairy and the fact that we're going to probably see him again real soon. So I hope that you psychos out there as you're listening, I hope that you enjoyed this episode and we're going to be putting out more stuff like this. Most of it will be dropping on Patreon, but we will also be dropping stuff just as a podcast and on YouTube. So thank you for sticking around, and we'll see you on the next episode.
See y'all.